Welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii. I'm your host, Nicole Hori, and we're here in the studio today with Mark Bell from StreetVac. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, though I met you at Hawaii Inventors,
Right.
actually I think you're more of an entrepreneur. Can you talk about some of the things you've been working on recently?
Recently, and my most interesting project that I've been working on is something called StreetVac. It's a road pollution filter that goes inside the wheel well of a vehicle, so that as this car, vehicle, truck drives down the street, it literally cleans up, vacuums up the pollution that's on the street. That pollution would be made up of brake dust, tire wear, fluids that drip out of the engine, and even some of the emissions that come out of the tailpipe. Some go up and some end up on the streets.
Yeah. So what size are the particles you're trying to capture here?
Actually, the most dangerous is something that the industry or technical people talk about, 2.5 PM or PM 2.5. Those are the tiny microscopic particles that are on the streets, and as vehicles drive through the streets and down the streets, these particles are kicked up into the air, and we end up breathing them. PM 2.5, PM 10 are very microscopic. We don't see them with our eyes, and yet they're dangerous. When we breathe these, it can get into our system, and we, with all of the studies that we've done and all that we've read, these contaminants, this pollution is causing a great deal of health issues. Asthma has been associated with these particles, as well as other diseases like autism.
Really? Really?
In California, they did some major studies and found that on a major highway, people that live upwind from the highway have less incidence of autism than people that live downwind. And the numbers are staggering. It's just, it's amazing that, that these studies are proving that road pollution is definitely a serious issue.
So given all these different forms of health impacts, and I think your website also mentions cardiovascular impacts.
Correct, right. Anything dealing with heart, lung, we know that some cancers are caused by this. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly, this disease is directly correlated with this, but we do know that our studies show that when you live near a major road, then you are more likely to be sick, you are more likely to have asthma. What's really interesting, as you drive down the street, say down a dirt road, and you look behind you and you see all this dust behind you, you see it. When you're driving down, H1, you don't see that. But that same thing is happening. These particles are being thrown up in the air. People that are driving are breathing them, and that's one reason that the auto manufacturers have started to put in-cabin filters on vehicles. Most of the more luxurious cars are the ones that are getting them, but they recognize there's a problem. They don't necessarily know all the solutions, but we believe that StreetVac road pollution filters truly is a solution to road pollution.
Okay. And this is for people who live how far away from the freeway? Is it
the closer you are, the more you're in danger. We know without a doubt that if you're downwind, you are much, much more likely to get sick or develop an illness. In Los Angeles, they discovered this and have passed laws and legislation that you cannot build a school or an old folks home within, I think it's 300 meters of a major highway. They know
still
that
pretty far away. That's a
it
large
is, right.
amount of area.
And we're doing studies right now. We just concluded 4 schools here in Hawaii where we hired an independent company. They had no idea why they were doing this. We just asked them to test the levels, pollution levels at schools. We wanted to know if during peak traffic hours the levels were exceeding acceptable levels that the EPA has determined to be safe, and sure enough, we're far beyond that.
That's really sad.
Everybody says Hawaii's streets are so, our air is so clean. Oh, look how clean our air is. We have trade winds blowing all the
Right.
time, and some people say, yeah, but what about the volcano? But that doesn't really affect us much unless we have Kona winds. But for the most part, we have very little industry. Our air, in theory, is supposed to be clean, and yet we ask, why does Hawaii have the highest mortality rate of asthma than any other state in the country?
Oh.
And there must be a reason. And why does Hawaii have a disproportionate amount of people with asthma versus somebody from another part of the country when our air is supposed to be so clean? And Hawaii actually was just awarded something very special in the last few days. California used to own it, but now Hawaii
I think my
now
friends have been talking about this
owns
actually.
the fact that we have the most congested, Honolulu has the most congested streets than any place else in the country. We used to be number two. Los Angeles used to be number one, and we just overtook them. So this, we know, is the reason that we have such high levels of contaminants on our streets, and that our people are developing illnesses.
So do you think this is something that leads to long-term health effects, or is it just, once you get out of that environment, then you can, you're better and you don't have to worry about it anymore?
Well, unless you're living in Hana, let's say, you're more than likely going to be hopping in a car.
Yeah.
And wherever there is a collection of vehicles, this problem exists. I know I have to buy new tires every 3 or 4 years for my car. Where does all that rubber go?
Yeah.
I have to get new brakes every so many years, and my rotors get etched. Where does that metal and where do all those pieces and particles go? You multiply that by just looking when you're stuck in traffic on, coming from Kapolei or whatever, and you look, cars for as long as you can see, you multiply how much does a tire weigh when it's new, how much does it weigh when we decide to get rid of it, where did that stuff go? And what's interesting is the tire manufacturers won't tell us what they're putting in the tires.
Okay.
Back in the olden days when they had bias ply tires or whatever, the particles that would come off the tire were in larger pieces.
Okay.
And they weren't the risk that they are today. Now with our newfangled steel belted, whatever they stick in those tires.
It's safer for driving, but
Perhaps,
less safe for our lungs.
But the particles that are coming off are much smaller, and they are at the size that when we ingest them, they're making us sick. And it's not just us. When it rains, we all, laugh and say chocolate water or whatever, when it rains and all of
I
the
go swimming sometimes.
contaminants go into the ocean. You can see it. The water turns brown. But even when it rains a little bit, you see in front of many of the storm drains in Hawaii, don't throw stuff down here. Whatever goes in here is going to end up in the ocean. And it's killing our fish and poisoning our fish, and it's affecting our reefs. And that's what makes Hawaii, Hawaii. People pay lots of money to be tourists to come here. And if you take away our clean water and our reefs and our fish, we're just another big city. Why would people want to come here? So it's impacting our economy directly as well as our reefs continue to be destroyed. Our fish become unable to eat. So it's a major, major issue, and I think the reason that governments haven't gotten involved is because they don't have a solution.
Okay.
They know there's the problem. Without a
Yes.
doubt, they know there's the problem. They just don't have a solution. And in London, very recently, the City of London was fined by the European Environmental Agency or whatever because the level of contaminants on their streets exceeded what was acceptable. And the mayor was fined, but he wanted to do something about it. And the only solution they could think of was to spray glue on the streets. And so for the last few months,
Really?
they've been driving up and down in the middle of the night, spraying glue on the streets in London to try to keep
Trap it.
the contaminants from becoming airborne.
Do you know if that's worked at all?
It does work very temporarily, but the minute that glue dries, Or if they skipped one day,
Yeah.
not only will you be breathing contaminants, but you'll also be breathing glue particles.
Yeah.
So I went to London and I met with the mayor's office and I showed them what these very simple road pollution filters could do. And just yesterday, I received a message from them that we've been authorized as a vendor to supply the City of London with products. So now I'm kind of
Wow.
anxious to see,
That
does
could
that
be-
mean a big order is coming? Or at least we know they're recognizing that we have a solution that's much more interesting than their lorries spraying glue on the streets.
Wow. And I know you brought examples with you.
I
So
did.
maybe our viewers would be interested in seeing
This
what
is
it actually
such a,
looks
s-
like.
a simple technology. It's very inexpensive. They cost less than $1 to make. And this is an example of one that just recently I went to a filter manufacturer outside of Nashville. And we're trying to find just the absolute best possible combination of fibers and tackiness. The way this will work is it'll have an adhesive back on it
Okay.
that people will peel off the backing
Okay.
and then just stick it up inside the wheel well of their
Okay.
vehicle.
So it has absolutely no impact on the aerodynamics of your vehicle.
Doesn't change the
You can't
performance
see
of the
it.
car in any way. You can't see it. But after 6 months, this is what it looks like.
I'm glad you have this in a plastic container.
Yes, because it is. It's full
It's
of contaminants.
dirty.
It's, you can see
Wow.
these shavings here. If I had a magnet with me, I could show you that many of these particles are magnetic, which means that there are metals in here. We've had these analyzed, and there are brake dust, tire wear, wear from the asphalt from the roads. As well as fluids that leak out of a vehicle that are very dangerous. And because
Right.
these are full of hydrocarbons, they can be burned. And we recommend that you
Oh,
change
really?
you change the road pollution filters. We recommend every time you get your oil changed or every time you get your car serviced. And then these will be collected and burned in, say, our H-Power plant. So we would get free energy out of the trash. So it's an amazingly simple solution. I went to a UN meeting in Manila several months ago, and there were over 100 countries represented there. The bulk of the meeting, they talked about the problem.
Yeah.
The problem. And I met with each of the delegates individually, and I said, what do you think of this?
Yes.
And without a doubt, each and every one said, finally, a solution. We talk about the problem. Nobody has yet come up with the solution. And so we believe that if enough vehicles have these installed, that we'll be able to pick up more pollution than we're putting down.
Okay.
And
So eventually it'll level out at some level that's
Right.
safe enough.
Right,
I would.
yeah.
Okay.
No matter what, if I remove this, and you
That's-
remove this, and they remove this, then things have got to be better.
Yes, I definitely agree with that.
And what's interesting is we have these new, electric vehicles or hybrids that are, saying that they're emission-free and, they're pollution-free. But they still have tires.
Yeah.
They still have brakes. And so they're still contributing to the problem.
Okay.
They're making an attempt, but nevertheless, it's really not ethical for them to say zero emissions because they are continuing to pollute.
Okay.
And I think we should make sure that, that gets corrected, that they shouldn't be able to make those statements because it's just not right.
But they could put on a filter like this for just a few dollars, perhaps.
And then they would be, it's like a buddy system, sort of.
Okay.
If you put them on your car and I put them on my car, I pick up your trash, the guy behind me picks up my trash, and
Yeah.
pretty soon we've got clean roads and healthier people and
Yeah.
cleaner oceans and safer reefs and
Yeah.
fish that we can eat again.
It certainly seems like the health costs saved would far outweigh whatever cost it is to put these out on the roads.
Yes.
Have you done any analysis of
With-
emergency room visits and things like that?
Without a doubt, especially talking with the Lung Association, the people that are overseeing, the tragic asthma problem that we have in Hawaii. We know that, X number of visits to an emergency room happen
Mm-hmm.
directly related to an asthma attack.
Okay.
We know that this simple solution will remove many of the contaminants that they're breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're a little bit too early to say
Okay.
we can reduce it by X number of percent, but we do know that we can confidently say we can reduce it without a doubt.
That's excellent to hear. I really like your model of just having the service guys do it when they change your oil.
Right.
And, if it's just a few extra dollars, that's something I'd be up for.
Sure.
Have you talked to other consumers who say that, they'd participate in a program like that?
Actually, this past legislative session,
Mm-hmm.
we had 2 bills that were being considered. One of them was altered by one of our senators who came up with an idea as an incentive to, if you would put these on your vehicle, then the state would allow you to skip a safety inspection every other year. So
Okay.
as an incentive to participate in this program, they felt that they were willing to give because it's
Okay.
a little bit of a hassle to get your car inspected. So if you can do it every other year instead of every year, that would be
Okay.
an incentive to participate in this as a voluntary way. Unfortunately, the guys at the Department of Transportation were very difficult to work with,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't cooperate with us, even though we agreed to pay for the program, pay for any additional personnel, provide volunteers, whatever it might be. They still just flat out said no. They were too busy, apparently not filling our potholes, though.
Wow. It's in other countries, is it usually the Department of Transportation you work with, or is it more of a health thing? Because you're really blurring the line between a technology for your car and a technology that's going to make people's lives healthier.
That's a good point. When I was at this UN meeting that I told you about a few minutes ago, it was in Manila. And for those of you that have been to Manila, their bay is not quite what you would say Hanauma Bay is.
Okay.
It's very polluted. It's disgusting. You wouldn't put your foot in it. It's so dirty. And while I was there, just by chance, I was able to meet one of their high-ranking political figures, and he was fascinated with this. And he was looking at it from a health, from the health aspect of, of course, benefits of having a clean environment are wonderful, but
Right.
he could see how this would impact their cost of health care and clean up the environment.
Right.
And he introduced me to a very successful businessman who developed the process of being able to take used motor oil, put it through his patented process, and he comes out with 70% virgin oil that he sells back to the oil companies. The last 30% is used to pave streets.
Oh, okay.
And I met with this gentleman, and he just was excited about the possibility, and he
Yeah.
agreed to bankroll this for the Philippines. And so the government has told us that they are willing to mandate that these be put on all of their vehicles.
Wow.
And this
That's a huge commitment.
private
millions
company,
of vehicles.
right? Yeah, I think their population is 110 million. Of course, not everybody drives in the Philippines, but it's still, I was stuck in traffic. Just getting from the airport to downtown Manila is, a treat in itself. But so they can see the value of this, and the other windfall is that we're in the process of hoping to get these credited so that
Okay.
we can participate in this new currency, so to speak, of carbon credits and emission credits
Really?
that's
How
taking
does-
off.
How does that work? And who runs
Essentially,
that?
yeah, the countries in Europe have their own system. California has a
okay.
system. You might have heard it referred to as cap and trade. You
Yes,
hear this
okay.
cap and trade. What the heck is cap and trade? But what they do is they establish what level of pollution is acceptable, and if
Okay.
you exceed that, then we're going to fine you.
So really, this is like controlling carbon for, climate change, except that it's controlling emissions for human health.
Exactly.
It's just a different kind.
It's a different
of
category,
market.
but still in the
Okay,
same
okay.
sphere. And so, suppose you own a factory and you're polluting,
Uh-huh.
but it would cost you millions and millions of dollars to retrofit your factory.
Okay.
So you can go to the bank,
Mm-hmm.
emissions bank or carbon
Right.
bank, and say, I will give you this much money in
Mhm.
exchange for something that somebody did that was good, like
Yeah.
putting road pollution filters
Right.
or setting up photovoltaic farms or
Okay.
windmill farms. And
Mhm.
so the people that are doing good things are
Mhm.
receiving credits that they can take to this bank, which is like a stock exchange.
Okay.
And right now there's a significantly more demand than there is supply of credits, which
Okay.
means that the price, and they do this by metric ton of
Mhm.
O2 or whatever it might be. I mean, they even
Mhm.
do it with the farts of cows, believe it or not, that if you can
Mhm.
reduce that, then you'll receive X number of credits, because that is a big problem. Nobody
Okay.
really acknowledges that, but it's a contributing factor to the
Okay.
to global warming or whatever it is that
Mhm.
people may be concerned about when it comes to what cows produce besides milk. Anyway, so it's a new world.
Mhm.
It's a opportunity that we believe will help people to be more healthy, to
Yeah.
clean up the environment, and maybe give business people an opportunity to participate in this emission credit, carbon credit, or whatever credit program. I was in Sacramento just last week and sat in a meeting where the Air Board was announcing that in October they were going to have their first auction for carbon credits. And this auction would produce billions of dollars of revenue to the state of California, and that they needed to use that revenue not to help balance the budget or to build whatever,
Right.
new classrooms, but those funds needed to be put back into that same category of where they derive the income from, which
Okay.
is reducing pollution and emissions and so forth. And so, as I sat through that meeting, many people stood up giving their opinion as to how this money should be spent.
Uh-huh.
And it was quite interesting, and they are going to consider us as well to spend some of that money to perhaps put these on all the vehicles in California, which would be wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they definitely have problems with traffic. Even if we are number one, it
Yeah.
still hasn't gone away there,
No,
I'm sure.
Not at all. Yeah.
It'd be great to see this happen. I know you've brought a lot of other products to market successfully.
Yes.
So it's nice to see that this technology is in the hands of someone with your experience. Do you want to talk at all, just shifting gears about some of your other?
Sure. I grew up here in Hawaii. I actually lived in Waianae until I was in sixth grade, and so we were poor, and so I didn't have many toys. I kind of remember I got a coloring book once for my birthday or something, but so we would hang out at Pokai Bay and pick up things off the streets and whatever we could find. A cool washer was a toy to us. I have two sisters, and so I think from a very early age I was always curious about what could I do with this, or what could this do for me. And my earliest invention that I could think of that I commercialized was when I was in high school. We used to go to
Really?
nightclubs like Bobby McGee's and some of those. I'm sure they're not still around anymore. But I came up with this idea. I called it a highlight. And what I did was I took a LED, which were kind of new back then,
Okay.
bent the two arms down like this, stuck a little
Battery
in it, like a hearing aid battery or
Okay.
something, encased it in a rubber shield, and I would go and bring some friends of mine that were girls, and they would wear these in their ears, and then people would go like, "Wow, those are so cool! Where'd you get them?" And that guy over there has them. So I'd have a pocket full of these, and I would just be selling them out. So this was one of my first commercialized ideas
in high school. That's just great.
But then in my early 20s, my dad went to Micronesia, spent a summer in Palau. My parents, my mom accompanied him. They went to Palau and were teaching at the community college there. And while they were there, they were introduced to this plant called the cassava plant. Some people call it manioc or yucca, or it's not cassava, that's a melon, but cassava.
Okay.
But it grows in marginal soil, and it produces a big yield, and it's very high in starch. The product is high in starch, and it's what they make tapioca pudding out of, or the little balls that
For
you
boba
buy.
tea, yeah.
Okay, so it's same product. So it's very high in starch. Starch can be converted into sugar, which can be fermented and distilled and turned into alcohol. So at the time, the price of gas was quite high here, nothing like it is today, but and there was a lot of empty sugar land available. The sugar industry had pretty much pulled out of Hawaii, so land was available. And so we came up with this idea of, what if we grew this cassava plant and created automobile fuel out of it, so that Hawaii could truly become energy self-sufficient. That was our goal. That was our plan. And so we went to Kahuku and Laie and the North Shore, and would look in the backyards of people and say, oh, we see you're growing some cassava plants. Can we have some of your stocks? So we would take some of their stocks, we'd buy them. Sometimes they'd just say, go ahead, take them. And then just with little pieces, you could pop them in the ground, and within a short time, the side of Koko Head Crater in Hawaii Kai had this little plantation of cassava plants growing. From there, we had more stocks, so we leased land from BYU in Laie. And behind the Polynesian Cultural Center, we started a pretty big plantation of this stuff. And again, with the goal of making energy. And we were working with BYU Hawaii, and we're working out a possibility of putting a still on their property. Part of the distilling process, and by the way, the still that we created, there was a scientist in Maui that was working with us to do this. And so I went to Maui and helped him build it. But it was a solar-powered alcohol still. So again, it would be energy independent. And the byproduct would be hot water. And then we could get steam out of it too. And so we were going to sell this energy to BYU and provide them with alcohol for their vehicles. So this was kind of a win-win-win for everybody. And from that point, we needed more land, so we went to Kahuku, over where the prawns farms are, and we leased a lot of land from back there. And again, we're really excited. In the meantime, to make a little money while we were waiting for all this to happen, we came up with this little snack food item called Polynesian cassava chips. And I have one of these left. I'm not sure. I guess I was smart enough to keep one. But grown on the slopes of Koko Head Crater. And we made these chips. Take some home to your friends. And they were sold in places like it was used to be called the Kahala Hilton back then. They sold them. Grocery stores sold them.
Does it taste like a taro chip?
They're better than a taro chip, better than a potato chip, because, first of all, because they're a tuber, when we slice them, they're perfectly round circles. Taro chips are all kind of weird shapes. And taro chips are pretty hard. When you crunch on them, you can maybe even hurt your mouth if you crunch the wrong way. These crunched more like a potato chip, but they were really sweet. And they were pretty because it had a nice ring around the outside. So they were bright yellow in color, with that pretty ring around the outside.
And I assume this is not how people in Palau would have eaten them.
No, they were cooking them like a sweet potato. And so this was a little side project that we did. And I guess this will maybe show up on camera. But this is what the tubers actually look like. A plant could yield up to 75 pounds of yield per plant. And this was a teenage boy that used to come out and help me work on the farm. This was me back when I was in my early 20s. But so that, we were on track. We had difficulties working with the government here. They, didn't want to cooperate much, and we still just plugged ahead. And unfortunately, Hurricane Eva descended on us one day and
Yeah.
just totally wiped out everything. Blew all the plants down and salt all over the crops and so forth. That we just decided that we didn't have the energy to.
So it was really just unlucky timing.
It was.
If you'd done it, a year earlier, a year later, you might have
we
been
would
just
have
fine.
been, yeah. So it was just one of those, tragedies
Yeah.
when
I was
when a
on Kauai
hurricane-
when
So
Iniki hit,
yeah.
and I know it was horrible for like macadamia farmers and a lot of
Yeah.
people. Just
it takes
you
all
have
that.
an investment and you put years into it.
Yes, yeah.
It's a lot of work.
So with all that
So-
salt water being blown onto the crops and then into the
Mhm.
soil, it makes things so that
Yeah. So do you
Um,
still believe in cassava as a renewable energy?
if anybody's listening and has some energy and some time and a little money, I would
Mhm.
love to sit down with you and resurrect the project. I believe that this is the answer to Hawaii's energy self-sufficiency. We can put all the solar
Mhm.
panels we want on roofs, but that's not going to power our cars.
Yeah.
And so this is one concept that I'm quite confident would work here in Hawaii with all that vacant land that we have just sitting
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
Cassava grows in a marginal soil. It doesn't need a lot of water. It's
Mhm.
just
Is it-
really
Is it hard to maintain? Do you have to take much effort?
no, you just stick that little stick in the ground and
Uh-huh.
some months later it's 10 or 14 feet high. And all
Wow.
that product on the top, if you don't need it to replant, makes excellent cattle feed.
Oh.
Or
okay.
even biomass to burn.
Yeah.
So
That's.
it's
It still sounds promising.
it's
I have
promising.
to say
It is. Yeah.
That's
That
exciting.
is Hawaii's answer.
And I know you've also worked on a lot of other products as well.
Yeah.
What else have you?
Over the last 10 years or so, I've created more than 50 products that have actually made it into stores.
That's
I
a
can't really,
huge-
I can't really stand up and shout and say any of them was the big home run, but it was a good experience to be able to come up with an idea, taking it from
Mhm.
conception to completion,
Uh-huh.
and actually, standing in a store and watching somebody in Thinker Toys pick up my game and go, hey, this is pretty cool, and walk over to a cash register and buy it.
That's fantastic. So what is the hardest part? Is it getting the manufacturing done or doing the design?
Depends, on the product. Sometimes, I spent many a night, with a table set up in the living room, assembling and packaging. Sometimes, some of them I've been able to find companies to package it for me.
Okay.
The ideas seem to come quickly,
Mhm.
and I always have kept booklets either near my bed or close by, so that when ideas do come, I always write them down, because I might not have the components or the connections at that point,
Mhm.
but somewhere down the road it could trigger
Mhm.
an opportunity, or I could meet someone and say, gee, I'm looking for this, and it just so happens
yeah.
that I have that.
Mhm.
And so getting an order allows me to then go out and source the components and work on the assembly and packaging. And
Wow. So you
So,
help other inventors too? And
I do. Over the years, quite a few companies have hired me. More than I can count, probably hundreds
Really?
over the years.
Mhm.
A lot of this started back in the 80s when IBM PC was first announced, and it was this
Uh-huh.
brand new box and nobody knew what to do with it.
Okay.
At that time, many companies were coming up with accessories and
Yeah.
supplies and so forth. And Hawaii was so remote, so they didn't have
Okay.
the money to hire a full-time person here.
Okay.
So they would hire guys like me
Mhm.
to take on their product. And I called on about 100 different computer
Mhm.
retail stores. Now we have, Best Buy left, and that's it. But back then, there were a whole
Uh-huh.
bunch of independent computer stores. And so these companies would hire me, give me samples, I'd make the rounds, and the stores loved me, because every week I was coming by with new things and new toys, and
Uh-huh.
and I called, I guess they call us manufacturers reps,
Right.
but I did very well back in the 80s
And then you'd
as a
always be
manufacturer's
seeing the
rep.
new technology, get
Right.
to play with it yourself.
So I would go to major trade shows on the
Mhm.
mainland or at different locations, and while I was there, often people would say, Hawaii? Oh, we don't have anybody in Hawaii.
Yeah.
We've got these mouse mats. Do you know what those are? And I'm all, no, I don't even know what a mouse is. And so, they would load me up with
so
samples.
This was a
and
long time
this
ago.
this was back, back in the early days.
How old were you when you got started working with this computer
21,
business?
22.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, pretty young.
So back when you were still in college?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe 21, 22, 23, around there. But I focused on the computer industry for a good solid 10 years and rode the ride, and it was a good ride.
That must have been exciting.
But then, over the last 10 years or so, companies still hire me, whether it's, one company that created an electric catamaran for one person where they would, you would scoot around in the water. And so they hired me, not just for Hawaii, but globally to help them launch that. They thought Hawaii would be a good place to start. Well, I would say, quite a few. Every now and then I get that call of, hey, I've got this idea. I heard maybe you might be able to help me get shelf space or whatever it might be.
So do you have any advice for people who are interested in, designing products and making things?
I would say do it. People go to their grave with a great idea sketched on a napkin because it never went anywhere else. And, it may take some time, but we have like the Inventors Club here that we welcome people to come. And some of us that have some experience, don't mind helping and encouraging and sourcing manufacturers or suppliers. And, almost everybody's got an idea. I know it, I walk down the street and somebody, everybody's thinking at one point in their life, oh, I could do that better. Or, oh, man, why don't they make a spoon like this? And so, it's sad that the majority of those ideas, I think, go to the grave. They never get.
Well, it takes a special kind of expertise to actually bring the product to market and make it happen, because it really is a complex chain of,
and,
knowledge.
Many times it cost me more to create it than I really ever did, bank at the end. I mean, you're never guaranteed, you're going to get rich. But there's a heck of a lot of satisfaction for me to see my product sitting on somebody's shelves. That means a lot to me. And so, you make money. And you can become filthy rich. I mean, Mr. Silly Bands, he sold $200 million worth of shaped rubber bands, and it wasn't even his idea.
Really?
He took the idea from a little Japanese company that was exhibiting in Hong Kong. They had some shaped rubber bands that they were using for office supplies. To, I guess, they distinguished the one from another by their color and their shape.
Or you could do a logo or something with
But
it.
he saw that and said, what if I made them bigger and brighter and people would wear them on their wrist?
And the kids would just love it.
And he, his idea exploded and he made a boatload of money. So you never know, but it's still, it's not a slam dunk. It does take some work. You don't just, sketch something out and hold it up in the air and say, anybody want my idea, just give me millions of dollars.
So do you feel like there's a good community of inventors here in Hawaii? I mean, obviously you travel all over the world. You talk to innovative people everywhere. What do you see coming out of Hawaii? Or is there?
I do. I think there's just maybe a lack of resources.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It would be nice. I know that there are some angel groups around and people that are willing to fund ideas. Sometimes money is the hang up. Sometimes it's not.
Okay.
But maybe, if there were more or maybe an organized way of being able to have an idea, come to a club like the Inventors Club, be introduced to people, and then that last leg of funding or financing, if that was easily available, and it doesn't have to be, millions of dollars. Sometimes it's just, I need $900 for a mold and, this and this, and perhaps that
and maybe
idea
you just,
could
talk to someone
explode.
else who's had similar experience before, and that would,
And
get you much
experience is
further.
valuable, to be able to lean on somebody who's gone down that path.
Right.
You know, I saw, you know, one gentleman recently, he spent $30,000 of his own money developing a product, packaging it, never sold a single one.
Wow.
And if he would have asked me, what do you think of this?
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have said, you know, I'd rethink it. I don't,
Uh-huh.
but he didn't have a pool of conscience, you know, for somebody
Yeah,
to say.
people to give him feedback.
He probably showed
and-
his wife and his cousin and his friend,
Uh-huh,
and of course
uh-huh.
everybody says, oh, you're the greatest, you know, but to get independent, honest
Yeah.
feedback.
And who knows, maybe if he had more feedback, he could have, you know, just shifted it a little
Right.
over to something that would have been profitable for him and, you know, could have helped a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's always a tough challenge, trying to find exactly where your product fits.
Yes.
And who will use it, certainly. The Silly Bands example is a great one.
It is. And you know,
So-
the reason he got knocked off by lots of other companies.
Okay.
So if he sold $200 million only in the U.S., plus
Oh,
all of his
okay.
international sales, if you add in zany bands and all the other guys that jumped on the bandwagon,
Uh-huh.
they came on board because he couldn't supply the demand.
Wow.
And
okay.
so because there was a much greater demand than he was able to supply, other companies hopped on. And it wasn't a product that he could patent, so he had no rights to it. So
Okay,
anybody
right.
could just take it and run with it.
Yeah, but still, it's nice to see that it worked out for him, even if
Yes.
it wasn't, you know, patent protected and so forth. Do
Those successes are motivators, for sure.
yeah. So, are there any other projects? I think you brought a few
Well,
with
this was
you.
one that I came up with this idea that I had colon cancer
Oh.
like 6 years ago.
Okay.
And during the recovery process, I spent a lot of time in the bathroom. My bathroom didn't have any outlets,
Uh huh.
and so it was pretty boring in there.
Okay.
And so I thought, you know, I saw the toilet paper roll holder, and I thought, hey, there's some unused real estate.
Okay.
So I came up with this idea of putting a toilet paper roll holder with an MP3 player built into it. So it's
Okay.
just like an iPod. It's got a USB port. You'd put it in. When you get there, you hit the on button. It would
Uh-huh.
take off, you know, from where it left off. You can fast forward, reverse, volume up, volume down. And you can put over 1,000 songs on it, or
Okay. Uh-huh.
books that you want to listen to, or inspirational thoughts, or
Right, uh-huh.
scripture of the day, or whatever you might want to do. And so I've been shopping this around. Almost all of my time now is spent on Street Vac, but I do have a company some time ago that approached me that was interested in this.
Oh.
I've shown it to places like Bed Bath & Beyond, and they were interested in it. And QVC people were interested
Uh-huh,
in it.
uh-huh.
I actually got to pitch this to Kevin Harrington, the guy that started Shark Tank, and he liked it. But just because someone likes it doesn't mean you get an order.
Yeah, right.
And so I'm hoping that this one company that expressed interest will.
Yeah. And it
come
kind of
back
looks
to
like
me.
a children's product here.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want to show what you have.
I
the
put flowers
roll
on this one, and the original one will probably be white or some other color, the actual product. But I did come up with a children's version of this
Okay.
that's preloaded with songs and stories to encourage little Johnny to want to go sit on the big boy toilet. And so as he's transitioning from diapers into training pants or pull-ups or whatever, this would encourage him to want to go and listen to another story. And so I actually wrote some songs and stories that are ready to go. I'm hoping maybe somebody like Kimberly Clark, who makes Huggies, might see the value of it.
Okay.
But it's very similar to any other MP3 player. Lots of people use MP3 players as their choice of entertainment. And since that real estate is available in the bathroom, then I think it has the potential of doing well.
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely not something I would have ever thought of. So.
No, and it took a event. Of course, I totally recovered from cancer, so I'm fine.
Congratulations.
But it was like the necessity was mother of invention in that case. That I was truly bored, and I thought there must be something.
Yeah, yeah. Any others?
This is
off?
one that I worked on for a while. These are little silicone adapters that I applied for a patent on. And what it does is it allows you to take like a shoe button, you know,
Okay,
like
these are the ones you see on Crocs.
on Crocs, right?
Okay.
So you can take any shoe button, or you can use a zipper pull or a cell phone charm or whatever, but you put it in like this, and then you can put this on your shoelaces or your
Okay.
drawstrings.
So you actually have a little frame for the button part.
Right.
And it just slides over that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I made them in several different sizes, a small, medium, and large. So for instance, this size here, this isn't a pencil, but just so if you
okay.
imagine, it would fit on
Yeah,
the end of a pencil, so that you can decorate your
Right.
pencils. And there's 100 different ways of using these. The flat ones, multiple things you could do, but you could put them on your sunglasses, so you could wear
Right.
the shoe buttons on your sunglasses or on hair accessories or barrettes, or there's just lots of fun things to do with these. Because I don't have time to work on this, I've kind of farmed it out to a company in Los Angeles, and they're just taking it and running with it. They call on lots of big accounts like Toys R Us and places like that, so perhaps we'll be able to get some kind of an agreement with them
So you just
down the line.
see it in the aisle next to all the shoe buttons. And
Yeah,
You can add your shoe buttons to anything,
right,
any of your
right.
other products. Okay. It's a nice idea. So maybe I'll see kids wearing those sometime
I hope
soon.
so.
Yeah.
I think that would be really fun to start a new fad
Mhm.
and then watch them go crazy. So
Well, I just want to come back to Street Vac and talk to you a little bit about, what you think is going to happen to it here in Hawaii going forward. Is there anything, an individual consumer can do? I mean, can we talk to our legislators about this in the future?
sure.
What do you recommend to make it
Now's
happen?
the time for all of you out there listening. Now is the time to pick up your phone or go to a coffee hour. These people running for office listen when it's election time.
Okay.
Once they're elected, they close the door and who knows what they do behind doors, but they listen now. And it would be a benefit. Everybody would benefit if they knew how important this was. The other thing is our study that we had at the schools, I think, gives us the ammunition now to go back and say, you know about the problem. We confirmed the problem. Now what are you going to do about it? And they
Okay.
have a responsibility. That's why we elect them.
Right.
They are public servants. They're not like the gods that decide, they'll do whatever they want. They're supposed to act on behalf of us.
Right.
And if enough of us are sick and our water is dirty and our reefs are dying and our fish can't be eaten and, and we've got all
Yeah.
these health issues, we're showing them a solution. And it's up to them then to say, I don't believe you. And we say, prove us that we're wrong. What are you going to
Okay.
do about it? Since you know about this problem, since this independent company who had no idea what we were doing just proved that these schools next to major roads are, have contaminants. The principals were very cooperative. They said, we have to clean off our desks daily
Really?
because the soot that gets on our desks all the time. And so they know that
And there's
can't
no
be
industry here, so it probably is coming from the
There
cars,
is
not
no
from
other-
some
good.
company
There is
that's
no other
spewing
source.
it out. Yeah.
So and the other thing is we hopefully maybe within the next 3 to 6 months we'll have them on the shelves in Long's and
Okay.
maybe some auto parts,
Yeah.
Napa stores and so forth. That's what we're hoping, that enough people have asked us, can we buy them? Where are they
Yeah.
available?
Mhm.
They want to participate. They want to get
Definitely.
on board to do something. For a few dollars,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're not asking them to change their carburetor, but for a
Right.
few dollars, a lot of people, the studies say 30% of the people want to do what's right, just without any motivation. They want to do what's right. And that's a fair amount to get started.
Mhm. Yeah. It could really, show some positive effects and then hopefully bring everyone else on board too. But I think even 30% could really
Well,
cut.
that's significant.
pollution
Sure.
levels
Oh,
and-
that's very significant.
Yeah.
And that's just, people that are green anyway, that would
Yeah.
never think about throwing away a soda can.
Yeah.
They're going to take it home with them instead of toss it in a a garbage can in case,
Right, right.
So,
And you don't have to put in all 4 tire wells, right?
right, no, just 2. We recommend 2.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and they'll fit in, they're pretty universal.
Mhm.
Everybody's got some space up there that's available.
Okay.
And, you might have to move it slightly to the left or slightly to the right, but there's a space up there.
Well, that sounds good. Hopefully the auto manufacturers will eventually build in a filter like this.
We've
Have you talked to
requested
them?
that. Oh, I've gone to
Mhm.
to Detroit. I've met, I've gone to these auto shows. I've got commitments from guys high up in Ford that will say, "Oh, yeah, we'll get you to the right people," and then you never hear from them again. But
Wow,
what I'm trying to tell them is that this isn't going to cost you any money. They're always,
Right.
anytime you do something good for the environment, it's all, how much is it going to cost? How
Right.
much is it going to cost?
Yeah.
In this case, the automobile manufacturers will make money
Okay.
because, the average life of a car now is 18 years.
Okay.
If they were to put these in their vehicles from the beginning,
Mhm.
and they own the license or the technology for this, then they could, in essence, collect a few dollars times 2 over the life of the car, which
Right.
is a lot of money. When a manufacturer sells a car now, and I'm not talking
Mhm.
about a Ferrari or a Porsche, but the average manufacturer makes about $800 when they sell a car off the
Really? That's
assembly
all?
line. It's not very much money. And so, to add another chunk of money on top of that,
Right. Uh-huh.
that was what I was trying to explain to them was this isn't
Yeah.
going to cost you any money. You're going to make money on this.
Right. And it seems like a lot cheaper way to go about, improving the impact of that car
Right.
than any other.
And then they could stand up and
mechanism.
say, look what we did. I mean, just the environmentally friendly value of doing it
Mhm.
is worth a lot.
Yes.
And, we're giving them the opportunity to put these every 6 months into their cars.
Mhm.
And like you put an oil filter or an air filter, you'll make some money. And they're, they just don't think the way we think, I guess. Or they
Yeah.
don't care.
Well, it's a bureaucracy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I met with
enormous.
Michelin,
Oh,
I
really?
went to
Uh-huh.
one of the auto shows and there was the guy there from Michelin. I go, hey, can I show you something? This is so cool. I go, it's a road pollution filter. You put it inside the wheel well of a car and it picks up all the tire wear and
Right,
brake.
right.
Get out of here. And he chased me out. He
What?
wouldn't talk to me because they don't want to hear that they're the polluters.
Oh, okay.
But they are.
Yeah.
The guys making the tires are the polluters and they don't have
Mhm.
to tell us what's in those tires. There's no regulation
Well, it's
that
probably
forces them to
latex,
disclose
right?
it. And latex is very hazardous to ingest.
Okay. I know there are people who have latex allergies in hospitals and
Right.
healthcare settings, so forth.
Right.
So.
And so, they just, they don't want to be associated with the problem. But guess what? They are the problem.
Yeah.
And we have the responsibility as citizens
Mm-hmm.
to say, you know what? I drive my car every day. I have to drive my car every day. But what can I do to minimize the impact, minimize my footprint on this earth,
Right.
And so
I
I'm
definitely
the
hope it
evangelist. I
happens.
don't know if I've come across being a little bit enthusiastic, but I am.
No,
I
I mean,
want
it's-
this to succeed.
If you look at, what's happening financially for the U.S. and for Hawaii, healthcare costs are such a huge part of, the fiscal problems just because we have all these retirees whose healthcare costs are going up. And
Mhm.
if, we can improve the healthcare for,
Prevention.
prevent
You
it,
know.
improve children's situation as well.
I went to a conference a few months ago. They had all these doctors and hospital people there, and
Uh-huh.
all they talked about was, oh, we're going to run out of beds by 20, whatever, and healthcare costs are going through the roof,
Yeah.
and the doctors are angry because they're not getting compensated right. And I'm like, you guys want to talk about prevention? All you're
Yeah.
talking about is building more hospitals or not enough rooms. How come nobody
Yeah.
even cares about what can we do to prevent some
Yeah.
of this?
And it's not like it's any fun, going
Maybe
through medical
they'll, maybe
procedures
they'll be
and-
out of business if people become too healthy. So
Well.
they're protecting their industry, I don't know, but you would think that the healthcare industry would be the ones that would be championing this, getting
Yeah.
on board saying, this must happen. It's going to reduce our health costs.
Have you talked to any epidemiologists about, looking at this as a public health issue and, trying to, look at the costs and benefits from that standpoint?
We have, and we have, we have volumes of studies that have been done over the last number of years from independent people and, people from all sorts of walks of life that have done tests to try to figure out, where is the problem, where is the cause, what can we do about it?
Okay.
And that what can we do about it component has been missing.
Yeah.
They know what the problem is. They know it exists, but unless you have a solution, everybody just buries their head in the sand and goes like, we better not talk about it because we're liable, because we know about it.
Well, people who are watching now can find out about on your website, right?
Yes.
Streetvac.com?
That's correct, yeah. So get in touch with us. Send us emails. Let us know that you're interested and that you're concerned. And
thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Yes.
I think this is a really valuable product, and I'm excited about it. So
thank you.
I appreciate
Very
you coming
nice to
in.
be here.